The running back position continues to be very nasty to us in fantasy football, and at this point in the year, we've got to have accurate rankings. So we're going through the top 30 running backs for Week 6 fantasy football, and I'm doing everything I can to get us ready for Week 6. So go down there and drop a like on the video and subscribe to the channel to show your support. Now, getting into our first tier right here, I've got Jonathan Taylor still at number 1 and Christian McCaffrey as well at number 2. Now, these two guys have obviously been dominant for the entirety of the season. They've both got good matchups that I like. There's really nothing to argue with here on these top two. I mean, Jonathan Taylor continues to be just an enormous workhorse for the Indy offense. He's really that engine that makes them run, and he's got a good matchup versus Arizona. And then you look at Christian McCaffrey, who's going to Tampa Bay to play the Bucs, and it's like, that Tampa Bay defense, Baker is winning in spite of that defense. Like, their defense has not done very good this year, and McCaffrey is being treated like a true workhorse, like he always has in San Francisco, because they can't help themselves. But I do worry about Christian McCaffrey getting injured at some point because of how often they use him. But obviously, you continue to see that workload, you're going to continue to be in the top two. And then to round out the tier, Bijan Robinson at 3, and then Saquon Barkley is in tier 1 this week. So Bijan Robinson, coming off a bye week, is playing the Buffalo Bills at home on this Monday night doubleheader that I don't know a single person who asked for this stupid doubleheader on Monday night. But Bijan Robinson is going up against a defense that easily can be beat. I mean, we've been proven time and time again that you can beat Buffalo's defense through the air or through the ground by utilizing running backs. And Bijan Robinson is in this position too, to where he's so utilized in the passing game at this point that he's starting to become kind of this Christian McCaffrey type of guy, to where in his prime, he used to be so efficient running the ball. Now, McCaffrey hasn't been that, but Bijan has. And Bijan's been extraordinarily efficient through the passing game. So Bijan, he's a definite tier 1 guy on a weekly basis for obvious reasons. And Saquon is in tier 1 this week, and I think it makes sense, right? Because if you know exactly who they're playing on Thursday night, it makes complete sense. He's playing the New York Giants, and it's in New York. He wants to go there and show out to everybody. And I think for the most part, people understand the importance and the relevance of these revenge game narratives, because it does play into effect, right? Like Rico Dowdle's someone who's playing the Dallas Cowboys this week. He'll be inside the top 30 even if Chuba Hubbard is available. But Saquon Barkley, the only problem is that he's dealing with injury right now, and this year just hasn't been that good for him. But I'll take him against the New York Giants because this revenge game is something the Eagles want him to capitalize on. Now, dropping down to our next tier, I've got Jahmyr Gibbs at number 5 and Javonte Williams at number 6. Now, with Jahmyr Gibbs, he's going to Kansas City to take on the Chiefs on Sunday Night Football. And realistically, like, Jahmyr Gibbs is just always going to be the guy that doesn't see the amount of work that you would want him to see, or that I would want him to see, but he's so efficient. He's on the most efficient offense in the NFL. He sees the pass catching upside. So it's like, realistically, I'm never going to rank him outside the top 10. That's for sure. And this is even kind of a lower bar for him this week because I think Kansas City will do what they can to shut him down in particular, because they don't want to get killed on the ground and through the air by the running back. Because if you just looked at last week versus the Jags, they did shut down Travis Etienne for the majority of the time, so they can shut down the run. So I think that will be Jahmyr Gibbs' problem this week. But he's still a top 5 guy because he's a running back on the Lions. And then Javonte Williams at 6 at Carolina. Matchup is fantastic, and really it doesn't matter. Like, Javonte Williams is a top 3 back in fantasy football right now. He deserves respect. And I've been slow to the party. Like, I've been telling you guys over the weeks, I'm slow to this breakout party with Javonte because I just didn't think he was that good. He looks better than I've ever seen him. And this offense is running super well right now. And the matchup, again, is fantastic. Josh Jacobs is at 7, and James Cook is at 8. So Josh Jacobs versus Cincinnati, the matchup just screams right in your face that you need to take advantage of it, right? Green Bay's coming off a bye week. They're more fresh this week, and Cincinnati's defense is porous. It's just like atrocious, right? So that's a matchup to take advantage of, even if Josh Jacobs wasn't as good as Josh Jacobs is. Now, Josh Jacobs, the only problem is that he hasn't been that efficient this year, but his red zone usage, his workload is still like workhorse type of role. I don't envision myself benching Josh Jacobs for many guys this week. And then James Cook at number 8 at the Atlanta Falcons. The matchup is ideal. Atlanta's coming off a bye week, but James Cook is on an offense that can get it done. Now, James Cook looked a little bit like what we've seen in years past this previous week versus the Patriots, where he was a little less involved. But if you actually looked under the hood, he was still plenty involved in that game. He just didn't get in the end zone and break off a massive run. New England did a pretty good job of bottling him up. I don't see that happening for another week straight, but because of that, I did end up moving him down a couple of spots. And then Devon Achan's at 9, and Kyron Williams is at number 10. So with Devon Achan, this guy, I said this after Tyreek went down. I think a guy who will benefit very much from this is Devon Achan, because he will become a lot more important in the passing game. And it really came to fruition against the Carolina Panthers last week. And what we saw was that Jalen Waddle took on more of the Tyreek Hill role down the field. And Devon Achan became kind of their short yardage guy on throws that Tua was going to make at the, close to the line of scrimmage. Devon Achan's going to be continuously involved in this passing game. The problem is he's just not running that efficient right now. Last week wasn't really that big of an outlier if you've actually looked at his game log this year. He's had some inefficient games, but he's also had really efficient games as well. So Achan's going to continue to go through this spell where it's like hard to know exactly when you're going to be able to play him really, really highly, but he's always going to be on your starting lineup. That's not to say that you should bench Devon Achan. That's just to say that in some weeks, his upside will be capped, and it could be capped against the Chargers this week. And then at Baltimore, Kyron Williams goes to Baltimore, and the matchup is fantastic. And they're coming off a mini bye week. So I would be willing to bet that there's going to be a lot of people who are looking at me like, why is he this low ranked? And I got to tell you, the comment section this year has been the nastiest comment section that I've ever seen. Maybe it's growth from the channel and because you guys just love me. But Kyron Williams, I'm not putting him that much higher because Kyron's last week was a little bit of an outlier. If you actually look at how they used him last week, they had him lined up in the slot. They don't usually do that. Like, I've never seen them do that with Kyron Williams. So it's just going against history to suggest that he will continue to be used like that. I'm not saying he can't be. Obviously he can, but I'm not saying that he will be because he just won't be most weeks. They don't use him like that majority of the time, but Baltimore is obviously a great matchup. He's a great play this week. But that is in reality a good poll to post on FS Roundup. When you're making start-sit decisions, a lot of times it's good to get the community's opinion on what you should do with your lineup decisions. We've made that completely free on FS Roundup. All you need to do is go in right now, and I'll do it. Type in Kyron Williams, go to chat, then click on start a poll, and go to week 6 and line him up with Devon Achan, and let's see what the community thinks about this one. Because I'll take Devon Achan, but I'll be surprised if it's not close to a 50-50 split on this one. So go in there, start your own poll, go help other people out with their start-sit decisions, and if you want a full team breakdown from me, you can sign up for the premium subscription, and when your first payment processes, I will break down your entire team for you, and you can also utilize the automatic waiver wire tool, which is saving people's teams from destruction in 2025 fantasy football.
This is Ted. Ted desperately needs to pick up a new running back, or his fantasy team is toast. Don't be Ted. Use Fantasy Football Roundup to automate your waiver pickups and rest easy this season.
Now, dropping down to our next tier, I've got Ashton Jeanty at 11 and J.K. Dobbins at 12. So this is a more exclusive tier right here. And the reason it is because I think the workloads are pretty set with these three guys. Like, Ashton Jeanty is still getting like 15 to 20 plus opportunities on a gamely basis. Now, the only problem is that we all know this offense is atrocious. Like, Geno Smith is turning the ball over like crazy, and they just can't get anything done if it's not to Ashton Jeanty right now. Now, the good thing is this week, it's a good matchup. So Ashton Jeanty, in reality, could be ranked higher than this. This is just a comfortability of the offensive situation for me and why he's ranked only at 11. But I think he's actually going to be a pretty good play this week. And then J.K. Dobbins at 12 at the New York Jets, and it's overseas. So make sure your lineup is set on Saturday night or very early Sunday morning because this game will be happening. And the Jets, by the time you wake up, they're going to get abused by the Denver Broncos. And J.K. Dobbins, realistically, realistically, like, he's still the number one back. I know there was a moment in time where people were like, well, look at RJ Harvey. He's coming through. Guys, it's so hard to know what the team is going to do. Any team is going to do in a blowout, let alone the Broncos, who I've been saying for a long time now, Sean Payton runs like the freaking mob. He doesn't tell anybody. So it realistically could be a good RJ Harvey day, but I'm definitely going to play J.K. Dobbins against the Jets defense. And then Quinshon Judkins versus the Pittsburgh Steelers in Pittsburgh coming off a bye week. In theory, the matchup doesn't sound great, right? The Steelers do have a good defense for fantasy football, but this is something I've said for years now, and it's been true for years. They have a bad running defense. That's just the reality. And Quinshon Judkins has done everything to show us that he is their number one back. And it's not close. He's the workhorse back. And he looks so good regardless of defense. It's just a matter of how often they get down there in the red zone, because his red zone trips are very few and far between. And that's why I can't rank him much higher than this, but realistically, he's a top tier RB2 at this point. Dropping down to our next tier, Rachaad White and Travis Etienne are at 14 and 15. And I'll be honest, there's a little bit of mystery in this tier for me, because Rachaad White, it looks like he's going to get to play a lot of the game again, because Bucky Irving is probably not going to play. That's already been reported, like he might miss several weeks at this point. And Bucky Irving is playing the 49ers defense, which in theory could be good because they're dealing with so many injuries, but also the 49ers are coming off a mini bye week as well. And they've got a lot of momentum right now on their side. So Rachaad White, based on last week, you would be inclined to say that he's going to get 90% of the workload. But I still do wonder about Sean Tucker and his involvement. If I knew that he was going to be the lead back unquestioned, he would be higher than this, because the Tampa offense is one that I want pieces of. Now, I just can't get over this Sean Tucker aspect that I do think plays a bigger role in Week 6 versus the San Francisco 49ers. So therefore, he's at 14. And Travis Etienne's at 15 versus Seattle. He got bottled up kind of like I predicted he would against the Kansas City Chiefs. And this week, it's not much better. Versus Seattle at home. And Seattle just got embarrassed defensively. But that was by the Buccaneers. The Jags offense, I just can't. I get it. They exposed me last week because I said they were a fraudulent team. They're not fraudulent, but I still don't believe that their offense is as good as Tampa's. That's a slight to Tampa, if I were to say that, because Baker is playing at an MVP level. Well, Trevor Lawrence isn't. So Travis Etienne is just still a part of this offense that I don't fully buy into, and they're playing just one of the biggest brutal matchups you could play. And Etienne was bottled up by a good defense against the Chiefs. This is an even better defense that I see problems with, but of course his workload on basically 15 plus touches per game is too much to overlook, much lower than this in my rankings. And then Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt is at 16, welcome home where you belong. And Derrick Henry's at 17. Now this is going to be a very interesting poll to post on FS Roundup, because Derrick Henry, this is a huge litmus test. Do you prefer Henry or Bill Krosky? Because for me, I prefer Bill Krosky. And I made this comparison on Monday night, what I got right and what I got wrong. When I was discussing Woody Marks and how I was right about him last week and that he was overhyped after one big week in a blowout game. So what happened was Woody Marks came out this past week and he was very much irrelevant again in this offense. And I warned people that that was going to be the case. Now, I juxtaposed him with Bill Krosky because Bill Krosky, it makes sense logically why he would be the lead back moving forward. They don't have a running back with severe draft capital to overtake Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt, or one that they've paid money to be their starter. He doesn't have any other established back in that backfield, and he is the best of the bunch. And it's very clear for weeks now. Now it's undeniable. So it makes sense to me why Bill Krosky would hold on to this role faster than Woody Marks was going to with the Houston Texans. So Bill Krosky, I'm ready to commit much earlier than I was ready to commit versus Woody Marks. So the Chicago Bears matchup, I think it's fine. I think Bill Krosky on a Washington offense that is good already is just going to be a recipe for success. And again, it's a great litmus test for Derrick Henry, because Derrick Henry is a guy that the community is low on, but he obviously has that name value to where it's like kind of weird to think about playing Bill Krosky over Derrick Henry. it's a move I would do. Again, post this on FS Roundup because this is an interesting one. He takes on the Rams. That's a defense that I don't really want much to do with already. And also, this offense, I'm assuming Lamar's out again, and they can't move the ball very well once again, whether it's Cooper Rush or Tyler Snoop Huntley. It doesn't matter. This offense can't move the ball very well. So I'll give him the benefit of the doubt and get in the end zone once again this week. But as far as being a workhorse monster that's super efficient, yeah, I'm going to take other guys. Dropping down to our next tier, Kenneth Walker's at 18 and Michael Carter is at 19. Now, this tier right here, I've got even more questions with because it's not even a question with Kenneth, right? We know this is a split backfield. Like, there's just no ifs, ands, or buts about this backfield right here. It's split right down the middle. And the determining factor of who's going to be better on a weekly basis is who gets in the end zone. Now, the one thing that I will stick with when it comes to this backfield is Kenneth is the better player. He's just more efficient, more athletic. So I'll stick with Kenneth against the Jacksonville Jaguars defense, who I do believe can be beaten still. I still think there's a little bit of a fraudulent element to this Jacksonville defense, which I know it sounds ridiculous at this point because they're the number one defense in fantasy, and Kenneth is not someone who takes 100% of the workload, even close to that. But I'll take Kenneth well over Zach Charbonnet because I still do think of him as a much better athlete. And then Michael Carter versus the Indianapolis Colts in Indy. Obviously, this team just went through one of the most embarrassing weeks I've ever seen watching football. And, here's the reality. It's popular to assume that the Cardinals will just continue to get worse. We never know on a weekly basis what we see with them. Kyler Murray, I'm assuming he plays because he ended up coming back in that game after he got injured. And the reality is Michael Carter clearly was lead back. He got 20-plus opportunities, almost 25 opportunities in this game. He's the lead back. I can't imagine they're going to play more of DeMercado after he just did one of the most embarrassing things you'll ever see. So Michael Carter at the Indianapolis Colts, while the matchup isn't ideal, the workload is. Now, Rico Dowdle's at 20 and Tony Pollard is at 21. So I've been thinking a lot about this, right? So Chuba Hubbard gets a contract extension over the offseason, and they obviously show him a lot of love with that contract, basically saying, you're our guy right now. So Chuba Hubbard is in this position to where it's like, he hasn't looked that great from a whole season perspective. So if he comes back, it's like, what is the real workload here? So I go and look this up, and I want to see what Dave Canales, the head coach, says about this. And he was non-committal about who was the lead back. He basically just did a workaround complimenting both guys, saying, we've got two good running backs. We're going to have to work through the workload. That shows me that Rico Dowdle just made an impression that they can't ignore because obviously that's the case. He just ran for 200-plus yards on like 20 carries. The guy was outrageously efficient, and it's a revenge game. Again, you want in on this even if Chuba's there. I'll play him over Chuba Hubbard this week because of this revenge game narrative and how brutally good he looked last week against the Miami Dolphins defense, who isn't much better, if at all, than the Cowboys. And then Tony Pollard at 21. Listen, I said this leading into the last week. I think that Tyjae Spears will continue to eat into his workload over time. So even though it's against a great matchup, the Las Vegas Raiders, I'm not going to put him much higher than this because I think Tyjae Spears will come into effect more as the season goes. And I think this week we'll probably see more of him than we did last week, which was the first week off his injury. You can't realistically expect him to get much work his first week back. I think Tony Pollard this week is probably going to get 15 opportunities to 17 opportunities, and Tyjae Spears probably gets like 5 to 8. So I think there's going to be more of a split this week, and Tony Pollard's upside is cut. And of course, when you're on this bad of an offense, that's not a very good sign. But the matchup is fantastic. Cam Scadaboo's at 22, and Chuba's at 23 to round out this tier. So Cam Scadaboo plays the Philadelphia Eagles tomorrow night on Thursday Night Football, and realistically, he'd be higher in this list if not for a couple factors. Tyrone Tracy is making his return in tomorrow's game versus the Philadelphia Eagles, which I do think will impact Cam Scadaboo more than some people might think. And number two, this is an Eagles defense I don't want to mess with right now. They're coming off a bad loss to the Denver Broncos. They are going to be like a wasp nest. They're going to be attacking this Giants offense, and the Giants are really injured right now. So it's not like they're in this great position to where everybody's healthy. They look like a really well-running offense. Cam Scatterby, his biggest thing has been volume over the weeks. It's not even been that efficient. So I've got my concerns with Cam Scatterby this week. He's at 22. And Chuba Hubbard at 23 to round out the tier versus Dallas. Again, I'm going to assume he plays because it kind of seems like he will play based off of Dave Canales and the way he was talking about this backfield. But if he plays, I still prefer Rico Dowdle because it's a revenge game narrative. And just look at the efficiency between the two backs over the season. Rico Dowdle has been the better back, and Chuba has played the majority of the season. Now, Chuba, I still think will be involved, so I'm going to keep him in 23 because mostly this tier has been about a lot of split backfields and a lot of backfields I don't trust, and this is just another circumstance where I would say you want an option in this backfield, but you don't know for sure which one it is, but I'm leaning towards Rico Dowdle. Now, dropping down to our next tier, I've got DeAndre Swift at 24, and Jaylen Warren is at 25. So when it comes to DeAndre Swift, they're coming off a bye week, and, you know, the funny thing is, like, he's been getting the workload. Like, it's been there for him, but it just hasn't been much of anything. And Ben Johnson did make a comment before the bye week, which was that, you know, this running game just hasn't been very good. And that I take personally, obviously because he came from Detroit where they were fantastic running the football. So I do kind of wonder if there's going to be more of an emphasis on getting another back involved in this offense because Swift just isn't cutting it. And Washington's defense looked much better than I thought they would last week, but they could still be beaten on the ground. So Swift right now, because of workload, I'll hang on to him at 24. And Jaylen Warren at 25 versus Cleveland, I'm assuming he makes his return as well. Apparently his arrow is trending up. It's after a bye week. I would imagine Warren plays in this game. And Kenneth Gainwell obviously broke out a couple weeks ago without Jaylen Warren, but I still think Jaylen Warren is the clear lead back in this offense when he is available. So Jaylen Warren versus Cleveland's defense, possibly beatable, possibly a tough matchup, but Jaylen Warren, the one thing I hold on to with him is that he's looked really good as a pass catcher, so he's at 25. And then Dave Montgomery's at 26, and Breece Hall is down here at 27 this week. I know. Dave Montgomery, though, at Kansas City, really what it comes down to with him is it's a workload problem. He never has a very high workload. It's consistent, but it's not high. So what it comes down to is efficiency and red zone trips. And the bottom line is he's had a couple massive runs this year. He's had a couple really efficient games and a couple red zone trips. But the other reality is that he's had a couple games where he had volume, but he didn't do much with it. So you never know with Dave Montgomery. Of course, him being in Detroit's offense, you want to take a shot on. So I would say that against Kansas City, it is a matchup that has opportunity, but it is not the best defense that I want to take advantage of this week. So I've got him at 26, and then Breece Hall at 27 in this matchup overseas that already complicates things. And of course, it's against the Denver Broncos. And it's the Jets. I mean, their offense is so bad. He's already been pretty vocal about their struggles this year. I do wonder if we start to see less of Breece Hall. Now, it would go against all logic because he's clearly the best back without Braylon Allen and even with Braylon Allen. But Breece Hall is on this Jets team that's so dysfunctional. And this offense I can't really see do much of any good against the Denver Broncos. I get it. Workload is solidified. It's definitely been stable since Braylon Allen left. But I don't trust this offense much farther than I could throw them, which isn't very far. Dropping down to our last tier, Alvin Kamara at 28 and Ramondre Stevenson at 29. Now, Alvin Kamara, it's just a sad reality, which is that this is becoming a split backfield. And the problem with Kamara is that in a full PPR format, for example, he's eaten the past 2 years in particular based off of his pass catching involvement. Now, he's not been uninvolved. He has been involved still, but it's not been nearly enough like it used to be to provide him top 10, top 15 upside. And he's also just not looking as good on a per touch basis out of the backfield. Now, in the carry department, he looks as good as can be expected. A little less than 4 yards per carry on a bad offense. Not terrible, but the reality is that he is not getting enough for me to really rank him much higher than this at this point when Kendre Miller's involved. And then Ramondre Stevenson at 29 at the New Orleans Saints. This is just a situation where you would think that all logic would say Travion Henderson should get more work because Antonio Gibson's gone now and Ramondre keeps fumbling every single week. The reality is New England wants Ramondre. And I got to tell you, I've said this for a couple weeks now. I don't blame them for not wanting to play Travion. He hasn't looked that good on a per touch basis either. Sorry, it's just the reality. Watch a freaking game. Like, this is not a back that's proven that well on a per touch basis that he should be over a guy who's like on a $30 million deal. So Ramondre Stevenson is going to continue to be the lead back in this offense, and he'll continue to get red zone work, which is why he's in the top 30. And then Zach Charbonnet at 30 to round out this whole thing at Jacksonville. Again, true split backfield. The guy has red zone opportunities. He's got to be a top 30 back in a lot of situations because this guy is on a good offense. Seattle's offense is good. It just comes down to who gets in the end zone. Kenneth is the better player, the better athlete, but Charbonnet gets plenty of work, particularly at the goal line. So let me know what you think of the rankings in the comments below. And if you want to see the top 12 defense rankings for Week 6 fantasy football, click on this video right here.